Wolves have been a part of the North American ecosystem for millions of years. They thrive in the Arctic, the Great Plains of Montana and Wyoming, and in the alpine and coniferous forests of Canada and northern United States. They are widely viewed as the last remaining wild and uncontrolled species, and with the recent wolf craze in the media, they are receiving more love now than ever before. With shows such as Teen Wolf, Twilight, and constant videos on Facebook and YouTube being shared of people cuddling with these animals, they're starting to be seen as more of a pet than a wild animal. And they, like all of America's wildlife, need to be managed. There are open seasons on these animals where they are doing the most damage, such as Idaho and Montana, but these populations have bloomed and they have spread into other states in search of food. Much of this has to do with the steady decline in ungulates in these areas, specifically central to northern Idaho, western Montana, and northern Wyoming. As seen on the Idaho Fish and Game website, elk numbers in the once thriving Lolo region of the state, which is in northeast Idaho bordering Montana, the Lolo mountain range, went from numbers in the 16,000 range in the early 90s to more recently in 2018 estimates of less than 1,000 animals in this area. This is clearly drastic, and some steps are being done at the state level to assist in the recovering of this population, such as paying hunters and trappers to harvest these animals, though considering the steep and rugged nature of this area, only so much manpower can be used. They are also affecting the deer population, as older bucks and does often feed in the lower country during the winters and are an easy target as they are not large herd animals. The percentage of these tags being filled by hunters in these states such as Oregon, Idaho, and Washington, specifically eastern Washington, have gone down drastically, as these animals that are still alive are constantly hiding as they are under threat from predators year-round, making it harder to find them and flush them out of these areas such as deep canyons and rugged, brushy drainages because they simply know it's safer to not move. Clearly, these animals are doing damage to wild animal populations, but what are they doing to you and I? Obviously, this affects hunters more than anything else, but wild game aren't the only animals, unfortunately, being affected. Ranchers are being affected in every state where wolves are present. The LA Times and the Seattle Times recently started a slam campaign against a certain ranch I will not be naming in northeast Washington, where these animals, again, are heavily protected. This state does not allow any wolf hunting whatsoever. And the state mandated that 31 wolves over the course of the last 8 years be killed as they were killing cattle. This clearly looks excessive from an outside perspective. However, if you compare the breeding cycle of these animals with a minimum of once a year, with litter sizes ranging from 1 to 8 pups, you can see how 31 years over the course of 8 years isn't really that drastic. The Oregon Department of Fish and Game also has an entire web page dedicated solely to providing the public with wolf and livestock updates, with new depredation cases showing up almost every month over the last few years since they have been reintroduced into this very fragile ecosystem. It's already ravaged by coyotes, mountain lions, and bears. The addition of wolves has done absolutely nothing but terrorize these ungulates. The majority of these come from confirmed packs in the state, of which there are 23 packs of wolves in the state of Oregon. There are also small groups of wolves ranging from small breeding pairs to 4 wolves, of which there are 9. This of course does not at all include the solitary wolves, which travel freely throughout the state. The majority of these packs are in the northeast corner of the state bordering Idaho and the Snake River, where they came from initially, and these areas are considered trophy units in the state, where all of the trophy-sized Rocky Mountain elk and mule deer are taken each year, as well as mountain goats and bighorn sheep. The west side of the state has yet to be massively affected, though, as it's only a matter of time now because established packs break up very frequently and they travel throughout the states, which is exactly what happened to get them here in the first place. Idaho was overpopulated, pack broke up, moved into Oregon and Washington. And now there are established packs in southwest Oregon. Jackson and Klamath counties have one, as well as one in Lane County, which is in west central Oregon, and getting pretty close to Portland, where a lot of this lawmaking is done. Again, what does this mean for us? Big factor here. The decline of wild game populations is causing a large strain on hunters as they are no longer able to fill their tags as predators have effectively removed a large portion of the animals that we are able to hunt. The killing of cattle could potentially, it hasn't quite yet, but it could potentially cause a massive spike in the beef prices as these animals are being killed off not just as calves, but as healthy breeding aged adults as well. This, of course, affects the pocketbook of your local rancher as well as the animals themselves. These are essentially these ranchers' pets. They love them, they care for them year round, and it is very painful for them to watch them just get killed off by animals that they are really not allowed to legally touch. It is becoming increasingly unsafe to hike alone in the woods as well, with a recent attack on a family in a Canadian national park by a lone wolf hunting around campsites is starting to kind of loom on the minds of sportsmen and women. This absolutely must be addressed at the state level. There are strict regulations on all other predatory game mammals in the state of Oregon, referring specifically here to black bears and mountain lions. The wolves are still considered a protected species, though they have become heavily established. So this should be a priority. And as conservationists, we've seemed to ignore this problem for a little bit too long. Sympathizing with a species of animal that kills to survive is crippling the populations of elk and deer across the western United States. Groups such as the Foundation for Wildlife Management are working hard to support hunters and trappers by essentially reimbursing them with cash to kill wolves if they're able to prove that they legally shot it in the state of Idaho and Montana. But if Oregon were to adopt a tag system for these animals, allowing just a few select hunters each year to fill a tag, it would not only be a new source of revenue, it would allow hunters and trappers to counter the yearly breeding cycles, and we would be able to help both cattle ranchers and the wildlife that are suffering from the constant pressure that wolves are applying with their presence in this state. Do we have any questions about this problem?
Is Oregon the only state that doesn't allow the sport hunting of wolves?
California, they claim that there aren't any wolves there yet, but with the Klamath and Lane packs, eventually that's going to happen. It could be in the next 5 years. They don't allow it. Colorado recently allowed the reintroduction of wolves, though that has been claimed to be a rumor. Couldn't exactly find a specific site that would allow that. But as of right now, Wyoming, Alaska, Idaho, and Montana are the only states that allow the hunting of wolves. So there's just 4.
Thank you.
As well as Canada, but that's not a united state. Right. Thank you.